Hi everyone, Tiffany here with my second card for the Hedgehog July card kit. For my second project, I wanted to create an interactive card in which the beach wave will retreat. To make sure this video tutorial isn't too long, I have already colored and cut both my images out of the Sunny Studio Coaster Cuties. You can't have waves without a beach. To create my sunny beach for the bottom of my card, I first took white gold and light gold watercolor and layered over a piece of watercolor cardstock. Before the watercolor dries up, I scatter some frosted crystal embossing powder over the watercolored area and rub it around to create uneven textures, and then set it with my heat tools. For the card base, I first took a piece of white cardstock trimmed to a standing A2 size and used my ruler to create half-inch borders on each side. My original idea was to create my sky on my card base, but found out it didn't work, so a slider panel will show. I end up creating a separate ink blend of sky on scrap cardstock. After that was done, I tested out where to place my waves and my beach area on my card and decided I can fit 4 wave layers onto my card. To create the wave, I took the 2 different blue paper and cut out 4 pieces of 1-inch strip of paper. Once I have a total of 8 strips of paper, I took the stitch wave die from the Rick Rack border die set and die cut the shape on all 8 strips of paper, making sure all the waves were aligned. To set up the first part of my wave, which will be stationary, I first marked it 1.5 inches off the bottom and then marked half of inches 3 more times on top, giving me a total of 4 lines. Each mark will be where the edge of each of my wave will rest. I then mark the same inches on the other side of my card base. Next, I lay down double-sided tape on each side of my card base and tape down the first part of my wave, making sure each end of the wave piece is lined with the pencil line. For the second part of my wave, I trimmed the light blue cardstock to 3 inches wide, allowing for a slight space between the vertical pencil line and the edge of my light blue wave pieces. Once that is all done, I took the same pattern paper that is 2 inches wide and marked off every half an inch 4 times for a total of 2 inches. This line is where I will place my second wave. I flip over my slider tab and placed it 1/8 inches of double-sided adhesive right at the edge of each line, making sure that this is really good adhesive. Position where my slider tab will be located and place pieces of post-it tape to hold in position, next releasing the backing and then taping down my second wave. To assemble the moving wave pieces, I slide the whole thing behind the first set of wave, place a piece of post-it tape on the top edge to hold it in place, and then careful from top to bottom, use my paper pliers to carefully lift the second set of wave to overlap the first set of waves. Once that piece is done, I set it aside, and that's when I decide to make my second panel for the sky. I needed my sky to be slightly lifted so my slider tab could hide behind it. To color my sky, I used Distress Oxide ink in Broken China and Tattered Rose. I next used my scissors to cut out the bottom inside portion of my card to make sure I have the edges, making sure to have the edges intact. This is done so that my sand panel will rest over my slider tab, but the card edge will rest on the same panel. Once that is done, I trim my fan panel piece to fit over the opening I've created and use double-sided tape to tape that panel down to my card base. To make sure my slider tab does not shift from side to side, I use a thin strip of cardstock to create a bar and tape it to the side of my slider tab using strong double-sided adhesive. I then test my slide to make sure it works. I next place a thin strip of foam tape at the top of my slider piece so that it will not push in too far. Trim my new sky background to the same width as my card base and lay down double-sided foam tape over the sky portion of my card. Release the backing and tape down my sky piece. Next, lay down thin strips of foam tape on the side of my card base, starting from the top of my ocean to the bottom, and regular double-sided tape on the side of my sky panel. Trim out 2 strips of white cardstock half an inch wide and tape it down over each side of my card, creating a border around my scene. To finish out the card, I wanted to place my girl in red at the edge of my scene, and to do that, I stuck her to my card base using double-sided foam tape to give her more lift. For the swimmer girl, I wanted her to move with the wave, so I have actually taped a small piece of acetate to her back, and the other end of the acetate will be taped to one of the moving wave pieces. For my sentiment, I stamp out on white cardstock using black ink and trim it to a one-sided flag. To make it pop more, add a slighter bigger flag in rainbow dotted paper to the back. This completes my last card as the July guest designer for the Hedgehog Hollow. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.